For so many people in our nation, the past few days and weeks have brought about all too familiar fears. Fears that they will be targeted, profiled, or attacked simply because of who they are, how they worship, or how they look. And so today, I am proud to announce the Biden-Harris administration will develop our nation's first national strategy to counter Islamophobia. This strategy will be a comprehensive and detailed plan to protect Muslims and those perceived to be Muslim from hate, bigotry, and violence, and to address the concern that some government policies may discriminate against Muslims. For example, the so-called Muslim ban, which President Biden revoked on our first day in office. So here's the bottom line. In America, no one should be made to fight hate alone. And in this moment, then, let us all clearly say, a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us.
This is my video update from Sophia, Bulgaria on this Thursday midday, November the 2nd. Let's talk about some news. And let's get closer to the statue of Sophia here in Sophia. And I believe where this statue is right now, there used to be a statue of Vladimir Lenin, and that was replaced with this statue of Sophia watching over the city, the protector of the city. So Lenin replaced by Sophia. That's a good trade, I guess. That's a good replacement. But what should we talk about here? What should we discuss? So Time Magazine, they ran that article on Zelensky, and they demolished Zelensky. They painted a picture of a delusional president of Ukraine, a messianic president of Ukraine, who is losing the conflict against Russia. And The Economist, they came out with an article yesterday with a focus on Zaluzhny, the commander of the armed forces of Ukraine. And according to Collective West media, Zaluzhny was also the mastermind behind the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. That is according to Collective West mainstream media, but we won't talk about that, will we? As long as Germany's not bothered by the fact that the commander of the Ukraine armed forces masterminded the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage, well then, who are we to weigh in on this matter? If Germany is cool with it, then we're cool with it. But they had a focus on Zaluzhny. Actually, Zaluzhny even, it was an interview, and then Zaluzhny even put together a pretty short article for The Economist, if you believe that Zaluzhny actually wrote this article. But basically what The Economist is coming out with regards to the interview of Zaluzhny and Zaluzhny's article on The Economist is they are making a pitch for more weapons. Zaluzhny, in the article for The Economist, he just pretty much comes out with a wish list of weapons that he needs in order to defeat Russia. He needs ammunition and fighter jets. He definitely needs fighter jets and drones and electronic warfare equipment and all kinds of high-tech equipment, surveillance equipment, counter-battery equipment. He needs all of this military hardware. And if he gets all of this military hardware from the Collective West, then Zaluzhny is telling The Economist that Ukraine can defeat Russia, because right now, according to Zaluzhny, the conflict is at a stalemate. That's how the commander of Ukraine's armed forces sees things. It is at stalemate. And Zaluzhny, in this article, he even says that Ukraine has been able to achieve military parity with Russia, even though it has a lot less of what Russia has. But he also says that the Russian military should not be underestimated. So if Russia, according to U.S. News and World Report, is the strongest military in the world, that is what U.S. News and World Report said, and Zaluzhny is claiming in this article with The Economist, he is claiming that Ukraine has achieved military parity with Russia, then I guess Ukraine is also the strongest military in the world, according to Zaluzhny, the mastermind of the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. So a wish list is what Zaluzhny is asking for. He wants a whole new military, pretty much. Keep in mind that Russia destroyed the first Ukraine military, which was the military that NATO had been building up over the 8-9 years between the Maidan coup up until the special military operation. Russia destroyed that military, that Ukraine military. Then Russia destroyed the Ukraine military with Soviet weapons given to Ukraine by the European Union. Russia destroyed that military, so that was the second military that Russia destroyed, and now Russia is destroying a third Ukraine military, which is a Ukraine military with NATO weapons. That's the third military that Russia is currently destroying, and so Zaluzhny is asking for a fourth military, and this military is going to be a NATO military, pretty much. Zaluzhny's even saying that Ukraine doesn't even have soldiers, so it needs more soldiers as well. And so you're going to have what Zaluzhny is asking for is a Ukraine military with soldiers and fighter jets and electronic warfare equipment and surveillance equipment and all the high-tech equipment that the collective West has. Give it to Ukraine and they'll be able to defeat Russia. So that is Zaluzhny's ask. Of course, NATO and the collective West, they don't have all of this equipment to give to Ukraine because many collective West countries have been demilitarized in the 2 years of the conflict in Ukraine. They've pretty much given everything that they can to the Ukraine military, so they have been demilitarized. And you have many of the collective West countries right now focusing on the conflict in Israel, and they have told the Zelensky regime, for example, the United States, they have told the Zelensky regime that Israel takes priority, and it takes priority even if we're talking about 155 millimeter ammunition. So it doesn't appear that Zaluzhny is going to get his new military, but the Economist is lobbying for Ukraine and for Zaluzhny to get his ask, but I don't see how that is possible, given the fact that many countries in the collective West have been demilitarized, and given the fact that the countries in the collective West that do have military capacity to produce weapons and to deliver and give weapons over are going to deliver and give the weapons over to Israel at this moment. So that was the article in The Economist from Zaluzhny. Stoltenberg, he told the media yesterday that the collective West cannot forget about Ukraine. He said that it is absolutely important, imperative, that as winter approaches, that NATO and the collective West countries continue to deliver money and weapons to Ukraine, understanding, Stoltenberg said, understanding that there is a conflict in a war in Israel, and that takes priority. Stoltenberg pretty much said, let's not forget about Ukraine. Because, well, Stoltenberg, as the CEO of NATO, he understands that NATO is a business and he needs to keep the business's inventory going. He needs to keep the supply of weapons into NATO, and the business of war in Europe and in Ukraine. He needs to keep that business activity moving, and so he is reminding everybody that they should not forget about Project Ukraine and keep the weapons flowing to the Zelensky regime. So that was Stoltenberg. And yesterday we had an interesting appearance from Senator Tommy Tuberville on Fox News. And he actually told Fox News that now is a good time for the United States to engage in peace talks with Russia. An interesting statement from the U.S. Senator. I agree. I agree that now is a good time for peace talks to take place between the United States and Russia over the conflict in Ukraine. But the United States and the Biden White House, they have to understand that any peace talks that do take place will happen with Russia's terms. Russia will dictate the terms of peace, and it is this reason why the Biden White House will never be able to engage in peace talks with Russia. What the Biden White House is looking to do is they are looking to keep conflict Ukraine going for at least another year, at least until the elections, the 2024 elections. They want to keep the Zelensky regime alive and capable of fighting this conflict, not winning the conflict. I think everyone realizes that Ukraine is not going to win this conflict, but at least keep the Zelensky regime and the Ukraine military, keep their heads above water at least for another year, so that they can make it to the 2024 elections. And then after the elections, we'll see whether the Democrats have the White House or if the Republicans gain the White House. That'll be a whole different story after the November 2024 elections. But for the Biden White House right now, negotiations are impossible. And they understand that they can't negotiate with Russia because Russia is holding all the cards and they have all the leverage, and any negotiations would be under Russian terms. And so for them, it is better to keep the conflict in Ukraine going and try to get it over the 2024 election mark. So an interesting statement nonetheless from Tommy Tuberville. And speaking about the Biden White House and elections, the Associated Press is reporting that, Biden yesterday actually said that perhaps it is time for a pause in the war in Israel and Gaza. That is what Biden said yesterday, which is quite a big shift in Biden's policy towards the war in Israel. A very big shift. And a lot of this shift, in my opinion, absolutely has to do with the elections. The Biden White House is very concerned that they are losing the Muslim and Arab American voter. They're very concerned. For example, I was reading an article in the media Thank you. I was reading an article in the media that focused on Michigan, and it said that the Democrat Party in Michigan, they are signaling to the Biden White House that the Democrats are going to lose the Arab American and the Muslim American vote in Michigan. And I think that we're talking about, I think the article said something like 350 or 400,000 Arab Americans and Muslim Americans are in the state of Michigan, which is a key state for the Democrats. And these voters are turning away from the Biden White House, where in the 2020 elections, I believe the number was something like 65 or 70% of that voter base in Michigan actually voted for Biden and for the Democrats. And they're turning away from Biden because of his stance in this war. And so one of the reasons that the Biden White House is now starting to talk about a pause in the conflict, and they're saying a pause in the conflict for humanitarian aid to get in. The title of the Associated Press is Biden calls for humanitarian pause in Israel-Hamas war. One of the reasons that they're calling for this pause is because of the election, because of the fear that the Democrats and the Biden campaign, they are going to lose this voting bloc. And they're concerned. I mean, Michigan is an important state for the Democrats, a very important state. And can you imagine if Biden loses 300,000 votes in Michigan or 250,000 votes in Michigan? He loses the state. So that's one of the reasons why we're hearing Biden talk about a pause. This is a big shift when you think about it. It's a very, very big shift from Biden's previous statements about the war in Israel and Gaza. Another reason that the Biden White House is starting to shift its statements and its rhetoric about the war in Israel, I believe, is because of the international pressure. The U.S. and the Biden White House, they're starting to understand that the more this war goes on, and the more you get incidents like what happened the other day at the Jabalia refugee camp, the more that public opinion, international opinion, is turning against the United States. And so they're understanding this. And even in Europe, I was reading statements from EU Parliament members yesterday after the Jabalia refugee camp bombing, where they said, this is just too much. We need a ceasefire. So you're starting to see cracks forming in the collective West as well. And I think the Biden White House is starting to, actually, I'm positive that they're realizing this and they're saying, okay, we need to do something. We need to perhaps at least get a pause for humanitarian aid to get in, and maybe that will calm things down and not lead to a complete break in the collective West coalition and position with regards to the war in Israel and in Gaza. So a shift in policy, perhaps from the Biden White House, and maybe, just maybe, this may be a bit of a de-escalation, though the fighting in Gaza is very, very intense at the moment. Perhaps we're seeing a political shift and maybe some chance of de-escalating this war. And there are reports that the Biden White House is even looking at a replacement for Netanyahu. This is what Politico is reporting. Netanyahu may not last. Biden and aides increasingly believe The Israeli Prime Minister's political obituary has been written before, but U.S. officials are already gauging potential successors. So Politico is reporting that the Biden White House believes that Netanyahu may have a few months left in power. They sense that the opinion of Netanyahu, his polling within Israel is not very good. Public opinion is not very much in support of Netanyahu, and as the conflict drags on, as this war drags on, they believe that public opinion will continue to turn against Netanyahu. Of course, a lot of Israelis are very upset with the Netanyahu administration with regards as to the terror attack on October 7th and how the Netanyahu administration failed to protect Israel, and they allowed Hamas to do what it did, to attack Israel on October 7th. So there's a lot of the population is in Israel that is already very upset with Netanyahu and the events that took place on October 7th. And the Biden White House just generally senses that his popularity is fading and will continue to fade. And perhaps it's time to think about a successor. And so Politico writes that Biden, when he met with Netanyahu, he even hinted at the fact that Netanyahu should perhaps look for a way to step aside and look for a possible replacement as far as governing Israel is concerned. Of course, Politico also says that Netanyahu is a survivor, and there has been a lot of talk about Netanyahu's demise in the past, and it's never happened. Netanyahu, he knows how to survive and how to stay in power. But keep in mind that Biden, he never liked Netanyahu. Netanyahu never liked Biden. They don't get along. They don't like each other. And perhaps the Biden White House is sensing an opportunity to remove Netanyahu from the political scene in Israel, and perhaps to put someone in place who gets along better with the Biden administration. So that is the article from Politico. The New York Times, they also put out an article yesterday where they claim that the Biden White House is very concerned about the disproportionate use of force coming from Israel. Biden's support for Israel now comes with words of caution. The administration has become more critical of Israel's response to the Hamas attacks, a shift that U.S. officials attribute to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And the New York Times, in this article, they actually say that, and I quote, "It became evident to U.S. officials that Israeli leaders believed mass civilian casualties were an acceptable price in the military campaign." And the New York Times added that Israeli officials even brought up the devastating bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki that the U.S. has employed against Germany and Japan during World War II. So, according to the New York Times, the Biden White House is very concerned and very alarmed with some of the rhetoric coming out of Israeli officials as to the use of force that they are willing to employ in Gaza, the excessive, devastating use of force that they're willing to employ in Gaza. And this is concerning for the Biden White House, and the Biden White House is trying to, according to the New York Times, they're trying to get Israel to tone things down, to be more precise and more focused in their war against Gaza, and to try and limit the civilian casualties, is according to the New York Times. Lindsey Graham, chief neocon, he was on CNN yesterday, and he said that Israel should be allowed to do whatever it wants in Gaza. He says that there should be nothing should be left off the table with regards to force for Israel and Gaza. So that's Lindsey Graham, and of course, what else should you or can you expect from Lindsey Graham? So that is the situation with what is happening in the conflict in Israel, the war in Israel and Gaza. Once again, heavy fighting is taking place. Very heavy fighting is taking place, and maybe we are seeing a political shift from the United States. That could be some good news. Maybe the Biden White House, as the election approaches and as public opinion turns against the U.S., maybe they are starting to realize that that escalation is not helping. It's not going to help them get reelected, and it is going to isolate the U.S. and perhaps even fracture and divide the collective West coalition for not only the war in Israel, but a fracture in the collective West unity could also affect Project Ukraine going forward. So the Biden White House is maybe, just maybe, signaling that it's time to tone things down a bit. Maybe not. They have no reverse gear, and who knows? Neocons like Lindsey Graham, they always seem to get their way. And when you get statements of de-escalation coming out of the U.S. administration, they're usually very short-lived, and we go back to full-on escalation and full-on war. The neocons always seem to win out. And Biden, at the end of the day, Biden is a neocon. So keep that in mind. Let's do a clown world. No, let's not do a clown world. Let's talk about one more news story, and then we'll do a clown world. And we're going to have to go back to Ukraine for this one. And Rybar is reporting, Rybar News. So I have not seen this reported in other news and media outlets. Even in Russia, I have not seen this reported. But Rybar is saying that they have seen F-16s, assembled F-16s, US F-16s moving from Poland to Ukraine. As of November 2nd, 5 aircraft of this type have already been transported to Ukraine. So the report from Rybar is that the Zelensky regime is very, very desperate. They've lost a lot of aircraft. Their military capabilities have been significantly degraded by the Russian military, including their air force. Even Shoigu, in a statement yesterday, he said that Ukraine is losing, and is losing very, very bad. That is what the Russian defense minister said. And so it looks like we are getting the first F-16s into Ukraine, disassembled F-16s. They will be assembled. I guess they will be assembled when they make their way into Ukraine. And you have the question of pilots. Who's going to fly these F-16s? Because the Ukrainian pilots have not been fully trained. The last reports of Ukrainian pilot training that we got was that they were still learning English. That was the last reports. They were in the UK or in Arizona or Texas, and they were still taking their English courses, and they haven't even gotten to the actual F-16 training. And so if you believe the reporting from Rybar, then you have 5 F-16s, disassembled F-16s in Ukraine at the moment. Another two F-16s are on their way, and they're being assembled they're going to be assembled in Ukraine. And the question is, who's going to fly these fighter jets? I imagine Collective West pilots. They'll brand them as mercenaries, as contract soldiers or contract pilots. That's how they will be classified by them. But I imagine that they're going to be the ones tasked with flying these F-16s and trying to do something in this conflict, because the situation for Ukraine is very, very bad, critical for the Ukraine military. And that's the latest there. An interesting story if the Rybar report is accurate. So now let's do a clown world. And this clown world, of course, has to do with Meloni, Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. And she was prank called by Vovan and Lexis. And this time, Vovan and Lexis, they didn't pretend to be Poroshenko. Finally, they pretended to be someone else other than Poroshenko or Zelensky. They're either Zelensky or Poroshenko when they prank these Collective West leaders. This time, they pretended to be the president of the African Union Commission. And they called up Giorgia Meloni, and Giorgia Meloni, of course, said some very interesting things under the belief that she was speaking with the president of the African Union Commission. She said that war fatigue is definitely setting into the European Union with regards to the conflict in Ukraine. She said, and I quote, "There is a lot of tiredness over the war in Ukraine." And Meloni also said that she has some ideas that she would like to put on the table to the Collective West leadership as to how to find an off-ramp to this conflict. But she said the time is just not right at the moment for her ideas. By the way, this prank call was actually recorded on September 18th. So the big super duper counteroffensive was just at the beginning of its spectacular failure. So keep that in mind, that Meloni was still under the impression during this call that perhaps the big super duper counteroffensive may achieve some results. So this was in the middle of September that this prank call took place. What else did Meloni say? She said, and I quote, "I see that there is a lot of fatigue. If I have to say the truth, from all the sides, we are near the moment in which everybody understands that we need a way out." So that was pretty much the prank call. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that Meloni said that was interesting during this prank call. She said that at the moment it's difficult to find a solution to the conflict in Ukraine that is going to please both the Russians and the Ukrainians and the Europeans and the United States. She said it's very difficult to find a solution to please all the sides, but that was pretty much it. A lot of tiredness, she said. A lot of tiredness, and she has an idea. She has an idea and an off-ramp to this conflict, but the timing is just not right. That is what she said. And she still hoped, she told Vovan and Lexis that she still had hope that perhaps Ukraine will achieve some sort of breakthrough, because Vovan and Lexis, they asked her about the progress of the big counteroffensive. And Meloni was like, They were like, look, Madam Prime Minister, we understand that the counteroffensive is not going well and Ukraine is not making any gains. And Meloni was like, yeah, I understand that, but I still have hope that maybe some gains will be achieved. That's what she said. Let me see if I have the quote here. The conversation then shifted to Kiev's summer counteroffensive, the outcome of which the fake African politician suggested was a far cry from what many had expected. Meloni replied that the operation was ongoing, but acknowledged that it had not changed the destiny of the conflict. Everybody understands that it really could last many years if we don't try to find some solution, Meloni stated. So, listening to the prank call, Meloni didn't really say anything shocking or stupid, to her credit. To her credit, she didn't say anything clownish, as others have said during these prank calls from Vovan and Lexis. So that's to her credit. But listening to her response with the counteroffensive and her belief that there was still a chance that something could happen, even though she understood that things were not going well, she still held on to hope that perhaps Ukraine could achieve some sort of small breakthrough or something positive with the counteroffensive. It just shows me that a lot of these EU leaders, they really have no idea what's going on the ground. They really don't. My hunch is that my belief, and I've spoken to, I've had contact with politicians and government officials in Cyprus and in Greece. You rub shoulders, small countries. You rub shoulders with people who have some contact with the government and government officials, and I'm telling you, these prime ministers and these presidents of EU countries, they just get briefed by their government staff as to what's going on in Ukraine, and the government officials, the staffers of the presidents and prime ministers in Europe, they're getting most of their information from the collective West media, from the BBC, from the New York Times, from CNN. So they get a lot of their information. I'm sure they get classified information as well, but they get a lot of their information from the collective West media. They get a lot of their information from the Pentagon, from the UK Ministry of Defense, and they put it all together and they present it to say Prime Minister Meloni, and they say, look, the counteroffensive is not going too well, but Ukraine, they've captured Rabotinya for the 30th time, and the 30th time is going to be a charm. So I mean, this is how they're getting their information. They really are not very much in touch with what's happening on the ground, the reality of what's happening with the conflict. So Meloni really doesn't have a good understanding of what's going on, because the information that she gets does not have a good understanding of what's going on, and that is why she was still holding out hope that the big super duper counteroffensive would deliver results. Back in September, we knew that the summer counteroffensive that offends me and offends you and offended everybody was failing, and was failing very bad. We knew that in September, but going off of this interview with Vovan and Lexis, Meloni really didn't know. So she's getting very bad advice, very bad information from her staff. That's my hunch. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Locals, and Rockfin, as well as Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. 10% off. Use the code TheDuran20. By the way, this is the St. George Orthodox Church here in Sophia. I believe we're talking 4th century. So this is an old Orthodox church, and it's really cool that you can just kind of walk around. There's no entrance fee, nothing. You just come here and walk around and take a look. You can't go inside the church and film. That's why I didn't go inside the church, but you can walk around to the outside.